coming up.
I think at the end of the day, we look at these agreements as useless because in not standing up for Canadians, these corporations have actually gotten bigger.
And a Dalhousie study, the food professor as he calls himself, shows that carbon taxes are increasing wholesale food prices by 34%. So my question is simple. Will you finally admit that carbon taxes increase the price of food? It'd be nice to get a straight answer for you once. You sound just like a Liberal minister. Yes or no, did you talk to the Ethics Commissioner to deal with your obvious conflict of interest?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
You claim you're working for the fairness of people and Canadians, and you're here today to claim that you're standing up for competition. After your agreement with the Liberal government that's now been over 2.5 years, there's been 3 mergers that have gone through. RBC purchased HSBC, Canada's #1 bank, buying #7 bank. Rogers bought Shaw, and WestJet bought Sunwing. And this has been detrimental to Canadians. Canadians are hurting right now. Why did you not stand up for Canadians and say no to these mergers?
That's not all the case. We did absolutely say no to those mergers. We said it was wrong at the time. And not just saying that it's wrong, now I'm putting forward a bill that would prevent those things from happening. We actually put forward the amendments in the other bills that I noted to make it harder for these type of mergers to happen. We've been very vocal opposing mergers that hurt Canadians. I've asked questions in Parliament on these very matters, and we are now I'm putting forward a bill in my name that specifically would ban mergers that make up more than 60% of market share.
So, Mr.
And in
Singh,
addition, we've put amendments that make it harder for mergers that are 30% and above.
So, Mr. Singh, you do have an agreement with the government, so at any time you could have ended that agreement. You could have included this as a stipulation in the agreement. And I think at the end of the day, we look at these agreements as useless because in not standing up for Canadians, these corporations have actually gotten bigger. When we look at HSBC and HSBC and RBC buying HSBC, even in Vancouver where you reside, HSBC had 10% of the book for mortgages. After that merger, interest rates went up almost 1%. More importantly, profits went up. Can you tell me, Mr. Singh, in this last quarter ending March 31st, how much more, what was the increase of RBC's profit versus the last quarter of December 2023? Just a number.
We are absolutely opposed to the type of mergers, and that's why we're putting forward a bill to do exactly that. So if the Conservatives are in support of these type of changes, I would invite them to support my bill, which would ban outright any merger that increases the market share beyond 60%. Support the bill. The bill is about ending these type of mergers, stopping mergers that hurt Canadians.
So, Mr. Singh,
for a long time, Conservatives and Liberals have ignored this problem.
The number is $1 billion. That's how much more profit RBC made in the first quarter of 2024 versus the last quarter of 2023. HSBC only made $300 million in that last quarter. So you can see what happens when mergers go through. Not standing up for Canadians means that Canadians are hurting. When we look at cell phone bills, and you've mentioned cell phone bills, Canadians do pay the highest cell phone bills in the world, and yet you stood up again and didn't say no to the Rogers-Shaw merger.
That's not true.
And at the end of the day, you could have ended this merger. You could have stood up to the government and said, this is our red line. We're not going to do this. And what's happened since then is that Rogers and Shaw both benefited. But maybe you can tell me, Mr. Singh, how much more, and I'm going to start with this. The Prime Minister that you support said in the House of Commons that cell phone bills went down by half. He said that. He said cell phone bills are down by half. So I'm going to ask you just a simple question. How much more in the year ending, March 31st, 2023, did Rogers make, and this is wireless revenue per user, than the year prior? Just the number.
We firmly oppose the Rogers-Shaw merger. I asked questions in question period directly to the ministers and to the government. I've been on the record. I don't know if the member ever asked a question on this ever. I've asked questions on this directly to the Prime Minister, said it's wrong. And I'm putting forward a bill that we're discussing right now that would protect consumers against these type of mergers. I'm literally addressing this matter in a law that we are talking about right now.
And Mr.
So
Singh,
if the Conservatives are interested in, which is news to me, protecting consumers, then they could support my bill, which would ban mergers that increase market share beyond 60%.
And Mr. Singh,
I oppose mergers that hurt Canadians.
Singh, you're talking
and we've got bills right now, a bill in front of this committee that would exactly do that, protect consumers against mergers.
And Mr. Singh, you're talking to the competition critic, the shadow minister, for the Conservative Party because our leader decided competition was that important to put someone in this position. And when we talk about where you could have been, you're actually in another position. You could have stopped the government from approving these 3 mergers which have hurt Canadians. We say, it's a walking contradiction. You're standing up for these corporations who have only got bigger
I'm not
since
standing
you've
up
been
for them.
power,
I'm
and
opposing them.
consumers have lost less power. We're not seeing the prices come down. We're not seeing competition in, and you presented a bill, and we presented lots of changes. Even you and I had the both efficiency defense change that this government stole from us that was there, but you're not standing for Canadians, and Canadians feel that you've sold them out. They feel
That's
that
not at all
you're
the
not
case.
standing up to the corporations. They feel that they're not going to do it.
That's
So
not at all the
people
case,
only
sir.
they only trust actions match word. Mr. Singh, the other push that we're pushing for in Canada is open banking. If we want to talk about taking a chunk out of the banks in Canada, open banking would do that. In the UK, when open banking was implemented, it saved the average person in the UK $400 a year. There's no transactional fees, no monthly fees, no overdraft fees with open banking, and it's only with 14% market share. And this government has 6 years to bring legislation to this government. They picked a regulator and only gave them a pittance, $1 million, to get the regulations in. This regulator, FCAC, was just in front of a Senate committee. Do you know how many of the 27,000 complaints that they answered since 2019? Can you just tell me the number?
So it's interesting. I mean, I'm literally saying to the member that we are opposed to large corporations ripping off Canadians. I have opposed the mergers. The member knows that very well, knows that I've stood up and opposed it. I don't know if the member himself has ever asked a question on this in question period, but I have. And I can say further that I noticed that the member has not asked a single question about the corporate greed in grocery stores. Is it because that your leader has been a receiver of the max donation from the CEO of Metros? Is it because the corporate or the conservative strategist for the party is a lobbyist for Loblaws? Maybe that's why they're not willing to talk about corporate food in corporate grocery stores, but I am. I'm ready to take them on. I'm ready to take on all corporations when it comes to ripping off Canadians.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Singh, for being here. You spoke a lot in your opening, obviously, about food prices. It's a main driver of this initiative. But after 9 years, the NDP has voted for every single budget that Justin Trudeau has put forward. And Canadians are more miserable and hungry than ever. Just as an example, lettuce is up 94% in that time, onions 69%, cabbage 70% since your deal with the Liberals. And a Dalhousie study, the food professor as he calls himself, shows that carbon taxes are increasing wholesale food prices by 34%. So my question is simple. Will you finally admit that carbon taxes increase the price of food?
Well, a couple of things are just false in that comment. 9 years, we have not supported every budget. That's not true. And in terms of the cost that Canadians are going through, Canadians were asked this very same question. Canadians were asked, what do you think is a major driver of your groceries?
What budget do you think?
And Canadians were asked, and they answered, they said, the major driver that's pushing up the cost of their food is corporate greed. And then we also had an investigation. We had the Competition Bureau look into this. And it is very clear that corporations are ripping off Canadians. In fact, economists have made it clear that more and more large corporations are ripping off Canadians.
The question.
So we're going after the major driver.
Increasing the price of food, yes or no?
We know the major driver, which is pushing up the price of food, is corporate greed. So why would we, and I don't know why the Conservatives are ignoring the major driver and looking at other things. We have something glaring in front of us that's hurting Canadians. The massive profits being accrued by CEOs of these large corporations, and the Conservatives want to ignore that, the major driver of the high cost of food, and want Canadians to believe that they actually care.
Mr. Singh, you're ignoring my question on the
Well, you're ignoring the major driver that is putting up the cost of food in our country.
Mr. Singh, you put a lot of fog in your support for the carbon tax recently at the Broadbent Institute. Do you support the carbon tax, yes or no?
Well, it's very interesting to me that we're talking about food prices, and I've made the assertion that corporate greed is driving up the cost of food, and Canadians agree with this assertion. And the member doesn't want to talk about corporate greed. The substance of this bill,
food prices, and
the substance of this bill is to take on corporate greed.
Will you answer a question, or are you just taking PMO talking points again? Does the carbon tax push up the price of food, and do you support the carbon tax? Yes or no?
The major driver pushing up the cost of food is corporate greed. And
Major
I don't know why the
major
member doesn't want to
driver
talk
is this
about
government's
corporate
policies
greed
that you support.
that is ripping off Canadians. When Canadians go in the grocery store and they're paying more money than ever for their groceries, they know they're getting ripped off.
How many people
I don't know
are now
why the
going
member
to
doesn't want to
food
talk about
banks?
corporate greed.
How many people are now going to the food banks as a result of your support of this Liberal government?
As a result of subsequent Conservative and Liberal governments that have not taken on corporate greed, have ignored CEOs ripping off Canadians, right now 1 in 4 Canadian is skipping meals. There's a record food bank usage because Liberals and
Thanks to your
Conservatives
support of
refuse to
Liberal
go
policy.
after corporate greed.
When you visited striking Metro workers and went on their picket line, did you inform them that your brother and NDP spokesman both lobby for Metro?
First of all, that's patently false. And secondly, the member knows very well that we have opposed corporate greed when it comes to Metro, Sobeys, Loblaws, Walmart, Costco. But it's interesting to me that Conservatives will attack everybody, including my family, rather than attack the CEOs that are ripping off Canadians. That is very telling.
We're just
that is very
attacking your
telling of who the
So did
Conservatives
you clear-
are.
when you
While I'm
attacked
directly
Loblaws-
going after the CEOs
you
of
attacked
corporations.
Loblaws-
Colleagues, Mr. Perkins, I'd appreciate if you could stay respectful in the words that you choose at this committee. I'll let you pursue.
He could avoid it if he answered the questions, rather than avoiding them like the Liberals do. So
Not at all, sir. You know that I've directly addressed the matter, which is that corporate greed is driving up food, and I'm attacking all large corporate grocery
Mr.
stores.
Chair, would you tell him
and
to stop talking over
maybe
me? I get to
the
ask
member doesn't want to
questions.
do that because his leader receives maximum donations from the CEO of Metro.
Point of order,
I'm
Mr.
willing to
Chair.
attack the
So-
CEOs of
okay,
all corporations.
Mr. Singh, yes, Mr. Perkins.
The NDP leader is talking over my questions. He's a witness. He doesn't get to pose the questions, and he's harming the translation issues while he talks over me as
Well,
I ask questions.
from my standpoint, it's been going both ways, but I would appreciate that, and you are both skilled parliamentarians, the practice is usually that the answer should be about as long as the question, and the questions have been fairly long, Mr. Perkins.
they've been about 20
So
seconds.
please
They've been about
just try to
20
keep that in mind going forward for all members, but Mr. Perkins, floor is yours.
So when you began the crusade on the grocery stores, did you clear with the ethics commissioner your stand because of your brother's conflict before you chose to attack all the other grocers except the one that he works for?
First of all, that's patently false, and the member knows it. I've attacked every CEO that's ripping off Canadians, including Metro, including Sobeys, including Loblaws. The member knows that. The member's lies will not change the fact that I'm right now talking about taking a corporate greed, where the Conservatives want to talk about everything but try to attack family members rather than attacking the corporate greed of these large corporations.
You've gone after Loblaws over 70 times and hardly ever mentioned the word Metro until we just asked you. So are you denying or saying that you did not clear your attack on the grocers and your direct conflict with your brother's work with the ethics commissioner? You didn't bother to do that?
The member knows that I have attacked all corporate greed by name, specifically including
Except
the
for your
CEO
brother.
of Loblaws, the CEO
Did you
of
ever
Metro,
meet with the did your brother ever meet with the CEO
of Sobeys,
of Metro?
the CEO. I've attacked Walmart, Costco.
Your
But the
answers along with my
Conservatives, though,
question.
Okay, thank
are
you.
unwilling
Did your brother
to
ever
go after
you.
corporate
Thank
greed.
you,
It's
Mr.
very
Metro.
telling.
Mr. Singh, I want to go back to the cell phone question. After Rogers Shaw, I asked you, did you know how much Rogers, the prices went up and how much the wireless revenue per customer went up, and I didn't get an answer. It's 1% for the year, on already the highest prices at a time when this government promised that it would reduce prices by 50%. Actually, it said it did that. At the end of the day, we're seeing a government that's promising something, it's not delivering. We're seeing that you're standing behind them and not doing enough to force them. You have the power, sir. And even when you were in committee with Heritage last week, you had the Bell CEO, Mike Bibick, in front of you. You didn't even ask him a question about the new Loblaws rates and the no price and the no name rates that are being offered through Bell. What is your red line, sir, in order to hold this government up to stop mergers that are hurting Canadians? Like you say, not just bills or asking a question in Parliament, but your red line to hold this government up to ensure you're standing up for Canadians, because we've not seen that at all.
I'm glad you brought up the Bell CEO. I think it'd be important to note that I was the only leader that went up against CEOs. I've gone against the Bell CEO. I've taken on the grocery CEOs. Again, I was the only leader there. to take on these wealthy and powerful corporations that are ripping off Canadians. I'm proud to be the only leader. I wish other leaders would understand how important this is and how much they're abusing Canadians, and they expect the leaders to show up. I believe that's a role of government, to stop big corporations from ripping off Canadians. That's why I showed up to ask these questions. That's why I will continue to take on big corporations.
You've allowed these corporations to roll over you. And Canadians see right through you. Mr. Chair,
conservatives know that I'm fighting back against. I'm just going to finish my answer. The question was quite long. I'm going to finish my answer, and then I'm happy to take any more questions. It is clear, and the Liberal and the Conservative know this very well, that I've taken on corporate wealth and corporate greed and the exploitation of these CEOs. The question specifically around Bell, the matter had not arisen. I would have loved to ask that question to the Bell CEO. I asked the question to the Prime Minister when I learned of it, but it would have been a great question to put to the CEO. But let's point out, neither Pierre Poilievre or Justin Trudeau asked any questions of these CEOs, but I did.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Perkins.
I want to go back to MP Singh. I want to go back to my question. Did your brother meet with the CEO of Metro? Yes or no?
Can you repeat the question?
Did your brother, who works for one of the largest lobbyist firms in Canada, meet with the CEO of Metro?
You know what's really interesting? Again, the Conservatives want to attack my family, but not the corporate greed of the CEO of Metro, Loblaws, and Sobeys. I wonder why.
Well, on April 1st, 2025, the Prime Minister is going to increase the carbon tax again, which is jacking up the cost of everything, including food, which you seem to be concerned about, but unwilling to do anything about, other than a puffery bill here. So on April 1st, 2025, when the carbon tax increases again, will you oppose that carbon tax increase, yes or no?
I think it's very telling that the Conservative member just said that a bill that goes after the bread price fixing, that goes after collusion, that goes after large corporations ripping off Canadians, his quote is, he called that a, quote, puffery bill. That is very insightful into the Conservatives' viewpoint of corporate greed.
So the answer is
they
no.
think that stopping corporate greed. I want Canadians to know this. I'm going to answer. I'm going to finish the question. I'm going to respond to your question. I'm going to finish it.
Longer than I asked.
Not at all. They specifically are referring to a bill that's going to take on corporate greed and stop what happened with the bread price fixing. He's referring to that as a puffery bill. That shows you where the Conservatives stand on this.
I want to go back to the ethics issue. Did you, yes or no, talk to the ethics commissioner or the conflict of interest commissioner before you went out against the grocery companies to inform them and get clearance because of your brother's role in defending and lobbying for Metro? Did you do that, yes or no?
First of all, that's patently...
Are you breaking the ethics laws?
Firstly, that's patently false. And secondly, I've attacked the Loblaw CEO, the CEO of Metro, the CEO of Sobeys. I've directly called them out for ripping off Canadians. I've not heard the Conservatives do that. So, and I wonder why.
So
I believe the reason is the Conservatives have no interest in going after the real reason why Canadians are paying the highest prices for groceries, which is corporate greed. They're going to ignore that and note what they're willing to do. They're going to attack anyone else, but for the real reason.
Mr. Perkins, Mr. Singh, it's impossible to hear. Je pense qu'on peut faire mieux.
We can do better. Mr. Perkins.
Where's yours?
Okay. So it'd be nice to get a straight answer for you once. You sound just like a Liberal minister. Yes or no, did you talk to the ethics commissioner to deal with your obvious conflict of interest?
The thrust of your question is, who am I attacking? I'm attacking the CEO of Metros. I'm attacking the CEO of Loblaws. I'm attacking the CEO of Sobeys. But the Conservatives are wanting to attack everyone else, even my family, rather than go after corporate greed. That is very telling. That is very telling.
Thank you, colleagues. That's all the time we had. We'll now turn